joining this call this afternoon. I would like to take this very wonderful opportunity to welcome you this Tuesday afternoon. It's a very beautiful Tuesday afternoon across East Africa, and we thank God for life, that we are alive at such a time as this and witnessing such a wonderful session such as this. My name is Gabriel Achaye, and I'm speaking to you at the East Africa Law Society House here in Arusha, Tanzania. And on behalf of the team, would like to welcome you for this very wonderful webinar session on Grow Smart, Win Big, your 5-year plan for a thriving legal career, that is hosted under the auspices of the East Africa Law Society Young Lawyers Committee. And as young lawyers, it is our desire to have a thriving career. It's our desire to grow, to expand, and go beyond frontiers. And sometimes the question is, how do do that? And this afternoon, we are blessed to have a very distinguished panel of eminent practitioners from across the region that have uh, set a mark and set a bar high in the area of legal practice. We'll be listening from them, getting their insights from pathways to career advancement. How do you grow from associate to leader? How do you specialize and still remain versatile? How do you integrate the work-life balance? And how do you build your brand? How do you network in and maintain reputation in a digital age? And ladies and gentlemen, to take us through that session are my very good friends, Miss Agatha Nsima, who is a partner at Bianca Chihika and Company Advocates, and she'll be assisted by Mr. Brian Andrew Okenye, an associate at Bianca Chihika and Company Advocates. Anthony, it's my profound honor to welcome this afternoon. I'll hand it over to you now to take on the session for the next 2 hours, and then we'll hear from our participants in the Q&A segment. Over to you, and a very big warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this much anticipated conversation. Grow Smart, Win Big, your 5-year plan for a thriving legal career. So whether you're joining us from Kampala, Nairobi, Kigali, Dar es Salaam, or anywhere across the East African region, or even further afield, you are in the right place, because today's session or today's conversation isn't just any other webinar. It's a strategy session, a check-in, and in some ways, a reset button for how we think about our careers in legal practice. You see, we are at an inflection point in the legal profession. Artificial intelligence is drafting contracts. Clients are asking for more value and at lower costs. And it is in itself no longer confined to the different courtrooms. So we now have lawyers that are specializing in climate change, blockchain, data privacy, you name it. The traditional paths are still there, yes, but the map has become a little more complex. So, and that's why today is important. Because if we are not careful, you can be busy for years, yet going nowhere in particular. Busy doesn't necessarily always mean being strategic, and working hard doesn't also guarantee you being smart or working smart. So the real question would be, what does it look like, not just to survive, but to thrive in law over the next 5 years? So whether you're finishing your pupillage, your clerkship, starting in an associate limbo, or contemplating a switch from litigation perhaps to in-house, or even wondering if you should maybe pursue an international practice, this is your conversation today. So this webinar is your space to pause, to reflect, to reimagine your career intentionally, And we've invited 4 incredible minds to help us do just that. They are accomplished, candid, and most importantly, generous with their insight. I'll now introduce our panelists one by one as we venture into this discussion. So first off, we shall have Mr. Laston Gulume. Mr. Laston will be the one that is kicking us off. He's the head of ALP Uganda, and he'll be unpacking the theme from associate to leader, pathways to career advancement. But also another special thing about Laston is that he also taught me in my law school. So it's a pleasure to be sharing the same platform with him today. So think of Laston as a friend who just figured out the maze and has come back to show you the way through. So expect real talk, practical advice, and a blueprint on how you can move up in your career. He'll be guiding us through a question that every early career lawyer eventually asks: how do I move from doing all the work to be the one that is leading a team? Laston, over to you.
Wow, Brian, you have thrown me in the deep end. I hope I can do justice. I see our participants are still joining, quite a number of them already online. It's a pleasure to have you. Friends, my name is Laston Gulume. I'm privileged to be serving as the head of ALP Uganda, which is the Kampala office of ALP East Africa. ALP East Africa is an integrated practice across East Africa with offices in South Sudan, that is in Juba. We are in Nairobi, Kenya. We are also in Tanzania, where Gabriel is. We are in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and we are here in Uganda, with, of course, the affiliate bigger family of ALP International in Nigeria, in Ghana, and Namibia currently. And it's interesting that when you come to a webinar like this, organized by the East African Law Society, and you're considered, you're able to share 1 or 2 things that people can learn from, it's a great, great privilege. So from the CEO, the president, East African Law Society, Gabriel, and the entire team, really, really appreciate this opportunity. I will not dare try to do in less than 15 minutes, something that takes people a lifetime to figure out. So in this particular discussion, which is going to just be a provocative thoughts being shared, you can share thoughts as we discuss in the chat. You can pose those questions and we pick up the conversation. If you're online on YouTube, thankfully you can share the link for people who could have missed, earlier on subscribing and registering for the webinar. But I believe myself, Joel, the other panelists, I am privileged to know the other panelists, and in one way or the other, our paths have crossed and our lives have, we have learned from each other. And I believe that you're going to learn a thing or two. But specifically on the uphill task that I've been given, I found it very challenging for 2 reasons. One, when you're talking of growth, you have to speak about the things that even yourself you may not want to hear. I am supervised by a senior counsel, Mr. Francis Dimara, whose standards for people who could have worked with him are known to be quite high. But if you're a young lawyer and you're growing, you're in the early days of your career, there are certain zones you will be in, call them growth zones or comfort zones, that you have to be pulled out to say, come up and pull up your socks to take up the bigger mantle that is ahead of you. So what do I want to tell us or share with us in the next about 9 or so minutes on this particular aspect of career growth and your career plan? Specifically for any person who has moved from being an associate in a firm, usually you are either whatever level of the associate, whether at entry level, mid entry level, or senior associate level, you're always working under a particular partner with particular goals, with particular key performance indicators and deliverables. But you have the soft landing that you always have a partner who is above you, who will do the most strategic thinking, who will be giving you, whom you will be consulting from, and they will be giving you advice. They will be giving you guidance on the work that you're doing. But where you are now called to a place where you're leading and people are looking up to you, people are looking at, our team leader here at office always emphasizes the lead by example. It's one of the key challenging, personally to me, they are one of the challenging areas where you can't ask someone to do something you've not done. And it's a growth area that if you are moving from associate to a leader, whatever level or ladder of leadership you are at, there are things that you will need to have a very uncomfortable discussion about. And Brian, unfortunately, that is what I'm going to share with the team. And I am happy to pick up some questions or anything in the chat so that we can share thoughts and be on the same page. But specifically, this question of career growth, you finished school, you've acquired all these the degrees, you've passed the bar, or whether you're in-house counsel or you are you are in private practice, so working with the government, you're thinking, how do I move from one level to another? But the question that I ask myself, starting out from the first place where I worked, is what do I want to grow in for my career to advance? Now, there are people who, because they have gone ahead of you, they act as a good example, but then I realized I am not going to be them. I am not going to be that person. I have my own life path that I have to chart, but I don't know how to go about it. So I kept asking myself, what should I grow in to advance my career? Attending certain spaces has helped me to learn that the world does not reward anything except value. The world does not reward anything except the value. So us being online, having this platform, like we're on the Zoom, we are live streaming. There are some people who have identified the need to innovate around platforms where meetings can be held online. I believe we would be looking maybe for a physical venue where all of us from East Africa, we want to come and sit and then go through these kinds of webinars. But people who have identified value in as far as technology is concerned have innovated. And I don't think it's different even for legal career. Identify the value, and it's different value that probably Joel is able to deploy. It's different value that probably I as Laston am able to deploy. It's different value that a particular person is able to deploy, but I believe it's like a unique marker. It's tagged to you that when you identify that value and you nurture or develop that value, then the world begins to look out for you. For example, Andrew, Brian, you being on this particular call and moderating it, there is value that was identified. So when you nurture the value, then you deploy it. If you hold on to yourself, whatever value you could give to the world, then you don't get paid. And if you don't get paid, then you don't advance. But if whatever you're doing, you're communicating to the world that here I am. And in as far as career growth is concerned, I was reflecting on the law in one of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership by John Maxwell, the law of the lead. This is one of the laws that I am personally wrapping my mind around and increasing my leadership efficiency by moving my lead upwards. As a leader, if you're talking of career growth, you stop thinking of skills, that I just need these skills, I just need to have this head knowledge. You begin to think of positioning yourself as a leader. And in the law of the lead, John Maxwell says that your ability to lead in terms of leading others is determined by the cap, the lead, the stopper, that determines your level of effectiveness and success of your organization or team. So in terms of career growth, when you enter as an associate, you're being supervised, you always have someone to run to give you guidance on what you're doing. As you move up the ladder of growth, mid associate, senior associate, you also now have people that you're supervising. And of course, you're eyeing to say, can I at one point be a partner in this business? That growth, I believe, at least from my humble experience, comes from you positioning yourself in places of learning that you increase your lead, you increase your otherwise limitations in life by building, of course, capacity among many other things. But I dare say that you are trusted to lead other people and to grow into leadership spaces in your career, whether you're in-house, whether you're specializing, whether in private practice, whether with government, wherever you are, based on your character and competence. And character and competence in another growth space seem to be the basis of trust. Why would people trust you? They trust you on the basis of your character and the basis of your competence. Character will be about your heart. The competence is about the capacity that you have to get the work done. So what do you do if you're thinking of a career growth plan? You must be thinking of building competence. You must think of developing character. We have the opportunity, of course, platforms and entities like ELS are organizing these kinds of engagements, which these are things we don't learn in school. One of the people I'm privileged to call a friend of mine, Dr. Daniel Weza, wrote a book which says we don't teach this at the university. Now, while Brian said that I was privileged to be an instructor at the university, there are things that we don't teach at the university. But yet when you come into the employment world, you're going to be required to be competent at them and to have the character to withstand and the character to carry the level of responsibility to which you're being called. So what habits? Habits that you need to grow as a leader. I would recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about these tiny changes that you do that lead to remarkable results. Now, I have stumbled many times, friends, and my supervisor, the people around me and the growth spaces I'm in, always will call you to accountability. And that's not an easy place to be. One of the things that I am submitting myself to is to always have accountability, both in the good times and also in the times that you're challenged. The moment you move out of accountability spaces, then the competency that you were building earlier, you could be competent, but no one knows about your competence. But with accountability, there are people who will know that this person from the beginning of the year, this person from the time they have started out working, this is how they are growing in certain habits. These habits, of course, are quite many. I can't really list them exhaustively, but I have learned that you have to learn to grow. Learning to grow, you invest time into materials, into even attending. Congratulations on attending this webinar. This is an investment of growth. You have to learn how to grow, and learning how to grow requires you to identify the spaces where you can find the material, where you can find the ingredients that enable you grow. Growth is about improvement, I would say so. So you have to learn how to improve. You stop growing when you stop learning. If I come into an office, I come into a matter and I have learned nothing from it, I'm reminded of my long French history where the Bourbons learned nothing and forgot nothing. But every day, if you're talking of 5 years may seem to be long, but they are short if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, of the things you want to achieve in life. So you stop growing when you stop learning. It means for me, every day I want to show up on any matter, there is something that I want to learn. You suffer the career death the day you stop learning. No, people don't die on the day they are pronounced dead. I am not a medic, but at least from some research and some readings that you have done, by the time someone, a plant, any living thing, by the time it says that this thing has died, the underlying conditions were there way before. But when it comes to career, at my very, very young career, I believe that the more I have committed to learn a thing, does that mean you're going to know everything at once? Of course not. You'll in fact do some mistakes, you'll hit yourself, you'll stand up again. Whenever you stumble, you have to stand up again. But there is this issue of, but you know, I have worked here, promotions. I want to be promoted. I've been an associate. You know, some people have come, they seem to be going over me. I have learned that no one wants to promote a rebel. No one. If you are known of a business, if you're working with people, no one wants to promote a rebel. So loyalty, which for me is at the base of how I work with the different teams I work, whether I'm serving here at LP, whether you're serving in other growth spaces, in other entities, if you're serving in church, if you're serving in an NGO, even if you're serving in probably a family establishment, loyalty for me has been outstanding to test my patience. Because sometimes the way you feel, your emotions will not be aligned with your growth plan. But the moment I test and find myself that I'm turning towards being rebellious, just know no one wants to promote a rebel. If you want to be rebellious, go start your own business. Go start your own thing. But if you're going to be promoted, you ought to submit to the tenets that test a person's loyalty and a person's value in that particular organization. Let me quickly wrap up with this, that while it is important to be ambitious, you don't want to be there laissez-faire. People come, they go because they are go-getters. And for you there, no, for me, I just wait on the Lord. I'll be okay. I'll be patient. You ought to be ambitious. But in being ambitious, I'm learning that the patience that I need to exercise is coming from knowing that there are people that have gone ahead of me. You don't know it all. My friend, you don't know it all. You're smart, you're wise, but you don't know it all. There are people who have gone ahead of you, and they know a thing or two that you don't know. In fact, I have learned that as long as I'm with a senior colleague, I am required to listen to them. By the way, I may not agree with what they are saying, but by virtue that they are senior and by virtue that I will need probably a certain promotion, not maybe in rank, but maybe in the promotion of your brand. I'm currently doing certain cases where I'm very humbled by the comments you get from the opposite counsel. They say, this young man we can work with. We are on opposite sides, but we can work together. When they say something, they will keep your word. But I have also learned that these people who are senior to me, they don't have to listen to me. I have to earn their attention. There are groups that we are in, for example, WhatsApp groups, and there is a way we have the opportunity to, engage in discussions with people who are senior. Sometimes they will post things that you have a better position about the matter. But the way you approach it, the next day when you need their commendation or recommendation, it will depend on how you have earned their attention to give you their valuable time. So you have to give value. That makes people, whether senior in management positions, to even give you instructions that they may want you in their space. What makes your presence relevant? What makes your presence necessary? Am I necessary in this space? What would require me to be on the big table with the big guys, with the big dogs? Value. I've summarized that in value. Does it come in one day? Friends, it does not come in one day. You work at it every day. So what makes your absence felt? That if you're not in a meeting, you're not on a webinar, you're not in a particular space, people will say, I think we should have this person as part of this conversation. It is value. Recently, I quote this from a team leader who are in a meeting and said, guys, business is war. And you have to demonstrate to be a good and faithful soldier. Why? He called it a foxhole situation. In every country where we are going through certain seasons, in a certain country whose name begins with a letter of an alphabet, they will soon be having elections. And the strategies around how are you supporting, investors to make decisions around certain uncertainties that come with the elections in the offing and so on and so forth. They are making decisions depending on how do they protect the interests of their stakeholders. You as a lawyer, what informs you're demonstrating to be a good fit for that business. So before you ask for promotion, what value do you have for which you can be promoted? Any person promoted to lead others, I want to say that they should themselves be faithful in serving another's leadership. I personally don't understand this, mentality of rebellion, and you don't submit to any leadership, but you want to lead others. The seeds you sow are the ones that come back to you. I'll end with this. The people who have gone ahead of you as seniors, I'm not trying to campaign for seniority and so forth, but by virtue of talking about promotion, it means that there are people ahead of you. They are not senior per se because of age. They are senior because they have been at this longer than you have. So they are not perfect because they are seniors. They merely have gone ahead of you and know a thing or two that you don't know from experience. So what am I saying? For me, what I am saying in conclusion is that this issue of how do I plan to advance in my career, one may need to consider to place themselves in a place where the decision makers will consider your lifting and promotion to be an advantage for business. That if you exit tomorrow, there will be a very big gap. There is an advantage of maintaining you than having you just on the peripheral. The promotion will cease to be, a mystery. Will it come? Will it not come? If you grow into the roles that you want to take on, it's a question of growth for me. That's the summary of my presentation. And growth, according to John Maxwell, the law of intentionality, growth is intentional. It doesn't just happen by mistake. Oh, I found myself, I've grown. If you want to be better at presenting cases, research, better at advisory, a transaction advisor, research. It does not just happen by mistake. And I believe that some of the conversations that my colleagues are going to be sharing later will be spotlighting some of the things that will enable you in breaking down and putting together your career path. Brian, I have tried as much as possible to do justice to a very difficult task, but for me, that is my story, that there is no two way about it. There is no utopia and fancy way and magical formula of become a partner in 2 days, become a senior associate in 2 days. You have to do the time and you have to do it patiently. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Laston, for that. I think you've given us an insight that is practical, that is raw. You did not sugarcoat anything. That's just the way I know you always tell us things the way it is. Like I said, I now think that many of us ideally realize that leadership isn't something that you wait for, but you have to grow into, and you also have to put in the work. I think that's what Laston has really been trying to hint at. Of course, next up, we have Aisha Abdallah. She's a partner at Anjarala and Kana LLP. That's in Kenya. She's speaking on specialization and versatility, basically chatting your niche in law. So the next question that she'll be tackling is one that I think we've all possibly asked, ourselves at a certain point. Should I be a jack of all trades or a go-to guru in a specific field? So in this session, she'll help you decide without the guesswork. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. So this question about specialization versus maybe versatility, I think it is a complicated one, and there's no black and white answer. I think the days when people could come out of law school and say they're only doing conveyancing or only doing litigation are probably well past. And now I think in many ways, lawyers are expected to be business advisors, sometimes counselors in family disputes, and we are expected to have a multiplicity of skills that goes beyond mere legal technical skills. So what does that mean in terms of specialization? I think the first thing to say is you can't specialize without first having a good foundation and understanding of the general areas of law. So I find it strange when I bump into very young people, sometimes they're not even admitted, who tell me, for example, Aisha, I want to specialize in arbitration. I find that strange because I think that the desire to specialize in the business case for it really can only be founded based on practical experience. So you would need to probably practice 3 to 5 years as in disputes before you are able to get a good sense of market trends, demand and supply, where there is a gap, and potentially what you are good at. And I always talk to my people about trying to align their strengths with an actual business need. So if, for example, I am very good at disputes involving chewing gum, but there's no actual demand for that skill, then there's no point me specializing in it, even though I'm very interested for whatever reason in that industry sector. So there needs to be a match between strengths and business demand. Sometimes you have one and you don't have the other. You might have an interest in an area and there isn't enough work. And I think a very good example of this is some years ago, a number of people went and did very expensive LLM courses in oil and gas law. And that was because there was a time when I think we were very optimistic in Kenya about becoming an oil exporting nation when there was the discovery of oil in Turkana. Many, many years later, it's been over a decade, we are now reading that potentially we may still have such aims and ambitions. But I can tell you that the people who did those LLMs and came back to Kenya have not been able to practice, because Kenya is not oil exporting. It may or may not become an oil exporting nation, but in any event, there isn't that type of specialist work. So if you do such a specialist field, you must also know that that would require you to work in a different country where that volume of legal work actually exists. And it doesn't exist everywhere. And this is why I'm saying you need to align your interests with and strengths with also business needs. So what is business need? Business need is you understanding not just the legal environment, but we live in a society. We live in Kenya. We're going through, at the moment, along with the rest of the world, a very difficult economic time. So we have a difficult economic climate, and that creates a certain type of dispute, and it may mean other types of disputes are less prevalent. So for example, now might be a very good time to develop a specialization in insolvency law, because we are seeing an increasing amount of insolvencies and restructuring, and it is a specialist area for us. However, there are also other emerging areas such as ESG and climate change, such as data protection, and maybe further in the future, things like AI and the law and the impact on decision-making by, for example, judges, and the ethics and governance around AI. These are all very interesting emerging issues. It's not clear to what extent we will get that type of specialist work in Kenya. And even if we do, whether there would be sufficient volumes to support more than one specialist. So I think we need to be very mindful of our context, where we live, where we work, the nature of the clients we are able to attract, the type of advice that they need from us. And if we are trying to develop a specialization, how will we market and attract that type of work? And is it realistic? So there's certain types of work that is probably only ever done by maybe international firms, just by its nature. So a good example of this is if Kenya is borrowing from the international markets, or it is negotiating something with one of the multilateral donors, whatever legal advice Kenya obtains, it is very likely that that level of complexity and the value involved will mean that certain types of practitioners will just not get access to that type of work. And that if you want to do that sort of specialist financing work, you probably need to be in a certain type of organization. So you would have to think ahead and say, I want to specialize in this area, and that would require me to go off and get this type of experience or train, or I need to change jobs because perhaps this type of work isn't done in private practice. It is only done either in the public sector, or it's only done by certain institutions or certain types of firms. And this is all part of the due diligence that you would be undertaking within your first 3 to 5 years of practice. So you're getting a good foundation in law, and then you are trying to understand where there are growth areas and where they are not. And this is really important because, unfortunately, people make a lot of money by offering law degrees, and they actually make even more money by offering LLMs, and for some few people, PhDs. So I'm always being offered, like on LinkedIn, people are always sending me, without me requesting, offers to undertake specialist LLM degrees in whatever specialist field. And the reason for that is because these are very profitable. It's a 9-month course. They are usually charged at a premium. And for you to incur that cost and maybe take time out to undertake that course, you really should have a very good idea that it is worth it and that the work will indeed follow, because it doesn't always follow that because you have a particular degree that you will get that type of work. So a very practical example I'd like to give is that I'm dual qualified, so I'm also an English qualified solicitor. And I first qualified in Kenya many, many years ago in 2000. And then I got married and I moved to England. And when I moved, at that time, there was a lot of specialist work in advising pension schemes, because there was a number of pension schemes that were changing their schemes from what is called a defined benefit to a defined contribution scheme. Now, these are technical terms, and essentially, unless you are like me and worked in a specialist pensions department, you would not know what they mean. But only public sector workers now around the world have something called defined benefit, where the employer retains the risk that regardless of how well or badly their investments do in the stock market, they will pay you a certain amount of your final salary during your retirement age. Nobody else provides this. So in the private sector, everyone has transitioned to what is called defined contribution, where the employee retains the risk of those investments rising and falling. Now, the work was there for the transition period, and there was a lot of it, and there weren't enough pensions lawyers. So I worked in a firm, and they were one of the few firms that had a pensions partner and a specialist department, and they were just making a lot of money. And then after 5 years, all the schemes had changed. So those pensions lawyers had to retrain. Many of them then retrained into employment law, because there's an overlap between pensions law and employment law. But not all were successfully retained by their firms, because the firms realized we don't need to retain a large specialist person in pensions going forward, because once you transition the schemes, the maintenance is very low level and it's not complicated at all. So I give this as a real live example to remind myself and everybody else that you must do your due diligence. And even if it looks to you like there's a lot of money at the moment, there's this parable of who moved my cheese. There might be a lot of money at the moment, but that doesn't mean in 5 years that money will remain. That money may have moved, or the cheese may have moved to another sector of the law, and we must move with the time. So I do think it is important to have a specialist area, one or two, not just one, because I think, for example, I do economic crime, but despite what we read in the papers, there isn't enough work for me to solely focus on that. So I do other things. I do arbitration. I do other things as well. If I didn't do those other things, I would not have sufficient work to justify the large team that I employ, and that would be sad. And I would also miss out on learning other things. So it's good to specialize. It does differentiate you from other people. So you shouldn't be like your peers. Everybody has a unique area of interest. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So yes, specialization should be promoted, but at the appropriate time. I don't think it makes any sense to come out as a newly qualified advocate and say, I am going to specialize in oil and gas law because Uganda will be exporting oil and gas. I mean, Uganda is hopefully going to be exporting oil and gas, but they're very unlikely to instruct a new, inexperienced advocate. So unless you're working in maybe a national oil company, you're very unlikely to develop the skills you need. And developing these skills will take a long time. It would be better for you to have a good, solid grounding, and then after maybe 3 to 5 years to get a sense of where markets are moving. And you may then stick to your original prediction Or you may decide to change. Perhaps by then we will have a lot of, climate change disputes, or we might have a lot of disputes involving AI governance. I don't know. So we do need to specialize, but we also need to, move with the time. So I know that we've been told maybe there's a lot of money to be made, for example, in arbitration. I don't actually think so. I think the market is a bit saturated. So if you have that interest, you would have to ask yourself, when I'm not getting that type of work, where else am I earning my money? Where else am I remaining relevant? And as long as you keep making sure you don't just talk to lawyers, and you don't just talk to institutions who want to make money from you by offering you expensive courses. Talk to the marketplace. Pay attention to the business news. Pay attention to which industry sectors are growing and which ones are contracting. And you may then decide that actually your initial preference doesn't actually make business sense. It doesn't mean it's not an interesting area to study, but if you are here to make a bit of money and to become successful, you will need to pay attention to the market, because ultimately lawyers we don't normally just advise ourselves. We advise other people. Somebody has to be willing. It's a willing buyer, willing seller. Somebody has to be willing to pay you for whatever it is you think is very important for you to learn. So I would just emphasize that I think law is a cross-section of many other issues like economics, society, rule of law. There's so many issues that intersect, and law covers all of this. And that's why we must pay attention to our context and then make the right decisions. It may be that the decision I made in the UK was only made sense there. Now I'm in Kenya, I do have to change because of my context and make different decisions. And if I don't do that, I don't think I will remain relevant. So I hope I've covered the material.
Yes, you have, Aisha. Thank you very much for that. You've basically given us a very good insight, one that will help us not just to chase every shiny opportunity that we look at. I think also we had a similar scenario in Uganda when oil was discovered in the Albertine region. Everyone was going for oil and gas, and I think people are actually still going for oil and gas. So thank you so much for that insight, which I think aligns with very many people. Though maybe just as before you go off, some people argue that yes, it may not be a lucrative sector at the moment, but looking into the future. For example, we have AI coming in. I think in the next probably 3, 4, 5 years, AI will be a very big thing. It may take some lawyers out of business. How would you reconcile that with, with the whole aspect of being versatile?
Yes, well, I think AI is one of those things. It's a little bit like oxygen. You and I don't get a choice. Do we breathe in or do we hold our breath? We have to interact with AI, and we do so. Sometimes we do so without realizing that we're using AI every day on our smartphones and on our devices. The issue is that we as lawyers don't really understand the parameters, the protections, the challenges and opportunities AI is presenting us with. And there's a saying, AI will not replace lawyers, but AI will replace lawyers who don't use tech. So we will have to get up to speed. I don't think it's optional. I don't actually believe that AI will get rid of lawyers, but I do believe certain low-level functions that don't require a lot of experience or wisdom or judgment, those type of tasks, they can be better performed efficiently by an algorithm. However, I'll give you a good example. I don't see AI gaining legitimacy and replacing judges. So I don't think as societies we will reach a point where we will be happy for a computer to decide a dispute between myself and you. I think that type of legitimacy will always rest with human beings. I mean, I may be proved wrong, but I think there is a space for AI, we must interact with it, otherwise we'll become obsolete. So again, I don't think it removes anything of what I've said. You can be a lawyer who is AI enabled and still specializes in oil and gas in Uganda. That's okay. It's just that probably if you use AI appropriately, it can do the due diligence I told you. It can even tell you how much work do you predict in Uganda will flow out of this oil, and it will tell you, and then you can decide whether or not to believe it.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. All right. So I think up next, we shall turn to something that many of us overlook until our bodies start to send us invoices that ideally we have to go see a doctor or something. So our third speaker is Miss Isobel Akwa. She's the executive director of the SATA Foundation, and she'll be basically handling work-life integration, sustaining success without sacrificing our well-being. We know that in a world where burnout is a badge of honor, though it shouldn't be, Isobel will help us rethink balance, boundaries, and the boldness of saying no when needed. So she brings a deep human perspective to this discussion. And like I said, in an era where burnout is common and lawyers often sacrifice at the altar of deadlines, Isobel will show us how to win without losing ourselves. Isobel, are you there?
Your friend, Hi, Brian. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Well, lovely to meet all of you guys. So, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Bill,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting subject, and thank you also for the speakers that went ahead. I think there's so many angles to this. There's something that Michelle Obama says, which is, you can have it all, but not all at the same time. And I really subscribe to that. I think one of the biggest challenges is that we try to do everything at once. And the reality is you can have, if you look at the full framework, so your 5-year or your 10-year plan, you can actually have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. So that's what I would start off with, that, and that's something that I've had to learn. I think early in my career, I really focused a lot on building the career. And that also meant a lot of sacrifices on my social life, etc. So I was not the person who could go out every evening like some of my friends. I was not the person that could spend weekends doing nothing. But I think I made the intentional decision that this was the season where I was going to invest. And so I don't know if you know the life, the thirds. So there's the season to learn, there's a season to invest, and then there's a season to earn. And I think sometimes, especially younger generation, you're focusing on earning before you learn and invest. I really like what Lanston talked about, which is around learning. Like if you stop learning, you stop growing. I think that's very true, because there's a season to do each of them. There's a season to learn, there's a season to invest, and then there's a season to earn. And you can't kind of do one without the other. And so the season of learning and investing are really requires a lot of intentionality, I would say. And it's important that you take that time to invest in yourself. And sometimes that means maybe doing something that is counter everybody else. And when you're carving out your career, it's not always easy. So those of us who, of course, finished law school, etc., you can imagine those nights that you are studying and other people are like, what are you doing? But you know what your goal is. So being able to focus on those seasons, I think, is very important. When you are in the workplace, it's also very important that you try to balance out. So like I said, I recognized, especially in the very early seasons, I'm a transactional lawyer by experience. I realized that I had to have some transactions that meant I was working really, really late. So For some season of my life, it meant honestly coming home at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, etc. And that was very ununderstandable for some of my colleagues who were working in different careers, and that's okay. But I also recognize that that was an investment period. Now, at this stage of my life, I can be more flexible about what I want to do. So I think it's recognizing what season you're in and being okay with it. It meant that I had to lose maybe some fun activities, but now in this season of my life where I'm in the season of, earning, the investment that I made actually pays off. It means now I can have more flexibility with my time. I have more flexibility with what I choose to do. I have more flexibility with how I balance. And so just be conscious of the fact that you have those different seasons. And sometimes the seasons might seem out of sync, but that's just part of it. The other thing I would say is just being authentic about where you are and recognizing that you have your own path. So one of the things I realized that people start trying to follow somebody else's path, right? So you have to recognize your own path. You have to recognize where you are and don't follow somebody else. I was working in the UK for many years and I decided to resign and relocate back to Africa. And nobody understood because for them, I was at the height of my career. But I also recognized that I had done my intentional investment time and I now wanted to pivot. And it was very difficult for people because everybody has their own agenda on how your career should be run. Your agenda might change because you choose to have family, or you choose to go into business and become entrepreneurial, or you choose to change course, or you choose to take a break. And all of those things are okay. And I think sometimes we feel like I am going to lose out on this thing, and it's because people are telling you what your life should look like based on their own perception. That does not mean you should not have mentors. I had mentors and I spoke to my mentors about my decision, but ultimately it was my decision. And I think, especially in the legal career, we are so scared about taking risks. And one of the things I would say is, especially for the younger generation, when you are seeing so much change, is you need to be much more entrepreneurial. We are not inherently entrepreneurial as lawyers, and that I think is a really big issue. You've got to be really entrepreneurial. You've got to think outside of the box. There was a visual that I wanted to share around that. I don't know if I can. Let me see. I don't think I can share it. But it's something that I pulled out, and it was also interesting because we started talking about AI. Gabriel, can I email it to you? And then maybe you can post it up. Just a second.
Yeah, sure,
Let me
Isabel, no worry.
see. Whoop. Let me see if I can just. It looks like a little heavy, so it's not allowing me to. Okay, I've sent it to you. But I really like the conversation, the short conversation around AI, because I think we've got to start. AI is going to affect law, of course, it's going to affect all of us, but we've got to start thinking about how we benefit from it. So when I say entrepreneurial, I mean, what can you do? How can you think differently? And entrepreneurial is really part of your mindset as well, because I've seen a lot of lawyers who left legal practice, maybe left private practice and gone in-house because it's a better balance. Maybe they have children and they want to do something different. So they go in-house and they create, they're able to manage their time, right? Or they go into different industry. You can be a lawyer who has interest in fashion. And so you decide that you're going to go into fashion. All of these things are important because what you're doing is you're being authentic. We need to be better about being authentic. So that means I love oil and gas, like Aisha was saying. I love fashion. I love farming. Whatever it is, I start navigating my career. Having a legal degree is one of the best foundations that you can ever have because you can really do so much with it. So part of this kind of work-life balance is being able to say, I have grown to this stage. I've got this incredible wealth of knowledge and experience and know-how. And now I'm going to use it in this capacity. I'm going to use it to teach, or I'm going to use it to start a business, or I'm going to use it to pursue, I want to become a partner at my law firm, or I want to specialize in these things. And I think these are conversations that we need to be much better at having. We need to have platforms that we can actually help young people navigate into different areas. We talked a little bit about climate justice, AI. If you are somebody that is really inherently deeply passionate about AI or interested in AI, you should be looking at how you can navigate your career, your legal career into AI, because we don't have all the risks now, but we can see what's coming. So I don't agree that it's not a career that you should look in. I think actually now there's a huge number of jobs that are vacant in AI globally, in cybersecurity globally. And we cannot think about, I only come from Ghana, I only come from Rwanda, I only come from Uganda. The world is looking for perspectives from Africa, and we're actually behind the curve. And so if you find yourself just really consciously thinking, reading about AI or climate or human rights or whatever it is, then pursue. And you can start that by writing about it and then navigating your career into it. And so I think one of the ways that you achieve work-life balance is actually doing something that you're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about something, it takes away that burden of it being work, right? So there's difference between something that is your job, which is just something you go 9 to 5 or 9 to 8 or whatever you do to get a paycheck at the end. That is work. That's the job. What you want to transition into is something where you're not just surviving, but you're thriving. And you do that by doing something that you're passionate about. And that goes from being work or a job into a calling or a profession or a career. There's a distinction between those things. So if you find yourself interested, read about it, be intentional about growing, find out, get mentored, do the work around it, because people need perspectives, deep perspectives. Don't just be a lawyer that only reads the law. Be a lawyer that goes into industry, that understands your clients or your potential clients' perspectives, challenges, needs, solutions, issues, because the best kind of lawyer is the lawyer that can actually walk alongside their client, right? So be focused on that. I agree, don't try to specialize too early, like Aisha was saying, but we all have these things that call us. So think to yourself, what are the solutions that really I feel like I can lend my experience or my knowledge to? And you can be 21 and have better experience at certain things than somebody who's 50. Don't be fooled by age. There's certain things that you may have lived. I meet a lot of young people who have got incredible solutions, maybe because they grew up in a rural community that I don't, or they come from a farming community that I don't understand. So when you're talking about climate justice, they have a learned experiential, not a learned experience, but an experiential knowledge. So don't let anybody ever tell you that because of your age, you don't have the rights to do certain things. You need the guidance, you need strategic guidance, you need mentoring, you need more experience, but you still have great ideas. So you have somebody who can come from a farming community that actually has a really innate knowledge of climate justice that I would not understand, right? And you may not understand that actually there's a role for you in the climate justice space. I think what we're not good at doing on the continent is providing a platform for people to understand that there's so many opportunities for growth. Your opportunity for growth as a lawyer is not just linear. There's so many ways that you can grow. And it's important, like, you have these conversations that help you realize that. So the end game for me is going from what you call a job to something that is a passion, a calling. That's how you really achieve that balance between work and life, because you're not even working anymore. You're doing something that you're 100% committed to. So it's something that you either know, I can help to solve this problem, or it's something that keeps you up at night. I am really always bothered if I see, I don't know, children in the street. I'm really bothered when I see what's happening in war-torn countries. What is it that keeps you up at night that is also indicative of something that is your natural calling? The law degree, your law education is an incredible, incredible tool it is not the destination, right? It is a tool that you can use to then really work out that full passion and to really achieve the balance. So I'll just stop there. I don't know, Gabriel, if you can, were you able to share that last page?
Thank you, Isabel, for that insightful information you've given us. I just wanted to ask a question in respect to that work-life balance, and I encourage the members that are present to, in case you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section. I wanted you to address the issue of mental health in the quest for, growing and thriving in the legal career. We have found that so many young people are pushing themselves to the limits to get those promotions, and it's affecting the mental health for many young professionals. Kindly shed some light on how to, protect our mental health in this quest for growing and getting the promotions. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult because I think a lot of the pressure comes from external. So you have a lot of people who say, I must be promoted in this place, but that pressure is usually coming from external, right? It's an external validation that you feel. So I think the first thing is, have you had an authentic discussion with yourself around your own career growth? Because it's a pyramid, right? So not everybody can be a partner at a law firm or be chief justice, etc. I think a lot of people, the mental health comes because they haven't had an authentic discussion with themselves around, is this really my goal? Or is this societal, family, whoever pressure, or even the career pressure? Because we tell people, if you start at A, then the only ending point is Z. Whereas actually, there are lots of different ending points. And so I think that's the first thing. One, are you really sure that is your authentic career growth, or is it an external pressure? Two, how are you doing your journey? I feel like sometimes people are trying to force themselves in a place that does not value what they're bringing. And it's okay. Don't leave, don't burn bridges ever, even if you feel like, I don't like this person or this organization, because the world is very, very small. But also be okay to step out of something that is not working for you. I have seen people who step out of a certain organization, firm, whatever, and they find that they're thriving elsewhere. So that's the other thing I would say, is just make sure that if you feel like you're putting yourself in this pressure, but you're not being valued, it's also okay to step out. It's not a mistake. You learn from everything. Three, if you've done those two things and you're in the right place and you really want to become partner, etc., take it easy on yourself, because your mental health is like the number one thing. So how do you do that? Make sure you're taking breaks. Make sure you're asking for help. It's not always, I know this is not every firm, accommodates that, because I think a lot of law firms on the continent have stayed very old school and believe almost like when you're dying, then you're really working, which is actually wrong. And I think you have to put your hand up and say, like, actually, this is not a healthy place for me to work. That's fine. It's fine to say that. But do you have the right mentors in place? Do you actually have a strategy for your partnership, or trajectory, whatever it is? It might not be a partner, it might be something else. But taking time out for yourself is super important, and being very clear around your objectives, having the support that you need, having a plan. But being also, the mental health part is also recognizing that sometimes your plans have to be flexible. So you can say, I want to be a partner in 8 years, and then suddenly you are pregnant with your children and it feels like things are taken off track. So I always say, have like your big vision. What is my 10-year vision? What is my 5-year framework? But recognize that things can change as long as I'm being authentic to my journey and recognizing that change is going to happen. I think it's super, super important that the thing that we treasure the most is our mental health, and go through that process of really thinking, am I on an authentic journey? you'll find that a lot of people that even get there, if they haven't really done the work on themselves and they've given up so much to get there, giving up relationships, giving up family, get there and are not then satisfied, right? And that goes to show that you haven't done the work at the beginning because you were chasing something that you thought would actually satisfy you. You get there, you burnt a lot of bridges, you've broken a lot of relationships, you've lost a lot of time, and ends up not even being satisfying. So please, please, please guard your mental health, be ambitious, but recognize that in your incredible framework and vision that you have, you're going to take the right steps, you're going to get mentors, you're going to have a strategic plan, you're going to get the education, you're going to think before you make any decisions, but sometimes things are going to work out, and be open to the change that happens around you as well. I never, when I left law school, did not think I would be focusing on AI and climate, right? I was going into traditional areas of law, but you allow change to happen to you. And oftentimes, as the change is happening, you don't even recognize it until you turn back and realize how far you've come. So let's be ambitious, 100%, 100. I do not like people who are not ambitious, but let's also map out our ambition, recognizing that we have to be flexible and we have to be open to changes that are coming. If you close yourself up so much, you might actually miss a better path, or a newer path, or a more experienced path. When I started law, like my legal career, I was sent on a secondment. And I remember thinking as a young lawyer, like, oh my God, I don't want to go on a secondment. I just, left law school. I'd done 1 year of law, and I was sent on this secondment into an industry that I did not understand at all. And it really felt like a mistake at that point. But that secondment actually ended up being foundational to the rest of my legal career, because it forced me to work with senior management at a very, very young age. And I then leapfrogged over a lot of things that a lot of my legal peers were doing, because I recognized that when you are working, especially as a corporate lawyer, your client does not have the time to read through 20 pages of like prose. They don't care. What they want is, what is the issue? What is the solution? When can we do it? How much is it going to cost? And it helped me to really think strategically as a lawyer. But that thing was initially, in my mind, a mistake. And I felt really aggrieved that I was going on this secondment for 6 months and my colleagues were staying in the law firm. So I think maintain an open heart. It's very, very important. Safeguard your mental health, maintain an open heart, have a plan, have a vision, but allow yourself to be open to change.
Thank you so much, Isabel, for that. I think that was a masterclass. Thank you so much for it. I think, of course, the average young lawyer is probably now debating, should I break my back, or should I, do something to get me that Toyota Land Cruiser in the next 2 years? Yeah. So now let's wrap up with the person who is going to help us get seen, get remembered, and get referred. Up next, we have Joel. When it comes to Joel, I do not really know where to begin from, because I think I have so much to say about him, but I think I'll just try to hold it back. So Joel is the head of TMT practice at H&G Advocates. He will be discussing building your brand, networking, and reputation in a digital age. These days, ideally, you find that your LinkedIn profile might get you into a room way before your CV does. And he will show us how to build a brand that basically helps us open doors and keep them open. Because let's face it and let's be honest, you'll find that there is a lot about you on the internet today. If you want to find out about Joel, you could probably just go to his LinkedIn, go through his bio, where did he study, what does he do, and all that. So he'll help us unpack how to develop a personal brand that commands respect in both the real and the digital worlds. Over to you, Joel.
Hey, thank you very much. Can you please confirm that you can hear me and that you can see my slides?
Loud and clear. I can see you. I can hear you. I can see slides.
All right. So I hope I can finish this in 14 or 13 minutes. Yeah, so my presentation is building your brand, networking, and reputation in the digital age. a little bit about myself. You know, the overview is I will introduce the topic, maybe just emphasize why branding matters, both online and offline, and then I'll share a few tips. You know, by way of introduction, I'm an advocate of the High Court of Uganda. I practice mostly data, competition, and technology law, but I also do corporate litigation for most of the corporate institutions at the firm. I also serve as a member of the International Bar Association Task Force on Artificial Intelligence, where we're trying to understand how, you know, the framework by which you know, the legal profession may engage artificial intelligence, because that's already happening. I also teach law, and I have 10 years of experience across 3 major jurisdictions, and looking forward to this presentation. So, you know, what is your personal brand? You know, it's your identity. It's really your reputation. For instance, it's asking, you know, colleagues at the law firm, what do they know about me that you haven't said, you know, purposely? Or what do your classmates know about you? Or what do your colleagues know about you? So it's your professional identity, both online and offline. It's what people may say about you in your absence. And I think it's very, very important to think about that. I believe it is built through values, communication, and consistency. So why does your brand matter? I think your brand matters because your brand is the identity you will have. You know, again, you know, Uganda, and I can say most common law countries take a slightly conservative approach in advertisement, or if it's even prohibited to look out and openly call for clients. And therefore, how you control your brand in the digital age then is important, because it can lead to career growth. You may be headhunted because you've strategically positioned yourself as someone who is contributing to certain matters. It may lead to referrals. It can also lead to recognition and promotions, but also, you know, it's a way for you to speak, to lead and matter, but also it fosters credibility with clients. I think the tip which applies to both offline and real world reputation is the first form of branding you can have is just be good at what you do. Please be good at what you do. If you try to brand yourself as a really good lawyer, but you're terrible, you know, you don't respond to clients' emails, you don't pick up the calls, you draft documents and they just have so many typos, that's a reputation that will go before you. And when people begin to ask, he claims that he's a good lawyer, she claims that she's a good lawyer, but we don't see much of that, then people will say, we might call you a liar. So I think the best tip for branding, in my opinion, is do excellent work, be good at what you do, and build goodwill. When you do that, people will be led to speak about your work. You know, we worked with this lawyer, or this law firm did such an excellent job. You know, so, and then when you focus on doing your work correctly, your online presence is only a multiplier of what we receive. You know, and reputation does move faster than most of us may think it does. So in terms of online branding, some of the platforms that a lot of lawyers engage at can be LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most recommended platform, X, or formerly Twitter, and there could be other legal forums. This could be sub pages that are created on such platforms, or any other online legal spaces created by bar associations. I think, you know, part of online branding is one, create a profile there, state where you're working, what you are doing, what you are passionate about, and then also begin to share insights about the things that you are really, really passionate about and things that you care for. If there is a new movement in your career, you're being promoted, you've taken a job overseas with the East African Law Society or the Competition Authority for COMESA, you know, state that, because when someone needs, they're thinking of someone, they're going to say, no, we know someone who's practicing in this area of law. And for me, I think that's a real power, especially in the digital age. You know, think of your professional profile on LinkedIn as kind of a digital handshake, because when you offer a handshake to someone, typically you will explain yourself and speak about what you do. You know, but I also think one of the best ways to create a brand is to engage in thought leadership. Again, the key word, it must be thoughtful. Again, we don't want to be writing things that are not easy to consume or easy to understand, but writing articles can be a good thing. You know, those articles could be published on your LinkedIn page. They could be published by the Bar Association, or even in the public newspapers or law journals. When you write and then you can share that on your platforms, people are much more likely to look at you as an authority. You know, join panels and webinars. If there's an opportunity to speak, you know, whether it's online or not, I think those are avenues that allow you to create a stronger digital footprint. That means obviously you have to be careful what you say, because for instance, this event is live recorded, so everything I'm saying here will be somewhere on record and could be downloadable. So you want to be careful. But also, I think one of the ways you can create a digital brand is share your wins and lessons for people to learn from. Like, you know, for instance, you're finishing law school, you're taking the bar exam, you know, at the Kenya School of Law. I think writing about your experiences can help you connect with people, your peers at the same level, but also it can be a segue into you being noticed by the market. But I also think strategic networking, both offline and offline, I think is important. It feeds into that. For instance, if you're attending an event and you interact with some of the leading lawyers, professors, and practitioners from the public service in a certain area, meeting them, sending them a LinkedIn connect, then you get them into your digital system. The next time you need something, you need some tips for an interview, those are the people that you're going to ask. I remember when I was going to study in the US, I had a number of people on my LinkedIn who had won the Fulbright scholarship. And I reached out to them and I had a number of mock interviews as I prepared for the interview. And I think that was very helpful. So I think of a digital brand as a really good way to expand your networks without really spending money on fuel or transport or jumping on a border or tuk-tuk to go to a law society event. And it can really, really be effective. For instance, as we're here, we have all these distinguished panelists. They have profiles on the firm websites or on the organizations they work with. Why don't you send them a LinkedIn request after this session? You know, again, you know, when you follow up, don't just say nice to meet you, be really intentional. For instance, you know, if Aisha mentioned something about specialization, you want to ask her how, you know, she decided to practice the law that she's focusing on. You know, you've seen she's doing things in arbitration. How did she come to get into that space? Asking curious and genuine questions is much better than generic statements. And now we have AI, which is an absolutely great opportunity, but generating a follow-up message purely from AI that's unrelatable to the person that you have met sometimes may make you lose some points. So just be genuine as you engage with people, but connect with intention, really, not just for numbers. Okay, think about, okay, there's something I could learn from this person, or I want to expand my networks to have lawyers from Tanzania and from Nairobi or from Kenya. You know, can I just reach out to them? But also it can be a really great way to find mentors and communities online. Some of the lawyers who first mentored me in the first 5 years of practice were people I had not met physically. I interacted with them on the LinkedIn, and then I sent them emails that led to a coffee. And then in some instances that led to an offer of an internship. So they can be real impact. Just the do's and don'ts, really. Please be authentic and consistent. Protect your credibility. If you haven't read the case, don't try to post about the case because it's a craze. Everyone in the Bar Association or the Law Society or everyone in the Law Student Society is posting about the case, so you want to say something. And then you're going to say something that was not in the decision of the Supreme Court. Please be authentic, protect your credibility, and don't overshare unnecessary information. You know, keep it professional. If you are interacting with people in a professional sense, then you might want to keep the conversations that way. And don't engage in online fights, you know, and drama, especially if they don't align with some of the professional goals that you have. But also branding can be a good way to manage your reputation and risk. You know, for instance, if something has happened and rumors have been spread about you, it can be a good way for you to clarify, you know, what the truth is in certain contexts. It's also a really great way to communicate your position on an issue if that issue is obviously one that is at heart and one that you are passionate about. But it's just really a great way to control your narrative. I really always recommend that when you're starting out, when you set up, for instance, a LinkedIn page, or you set up your own personal website, set it up, but learn, see what other people are doing, then reflect, and then begin to contribute and publish with time. And then, within 5 years or so, you'll have a sense of how things operate. But really, branding is about showing your work and building a story brand. LinkedIn is really, really a great platform. I personally have had people reached out to me through the internet. I've gotten some referrals from persons that were not based in the local jurisdiction where I work. They have referenced some of the things I've written about, which have been published in local newspapers, on platforms for affiliated international law firms, and a strong LinkedIn profile, which highlights clearly what I have been doing. And I think, that's sort of like what we should be going for, in my opinion. So the conclusion really is be intentional, start now. But you need to ask yourself perhaps an existential question: who are you and what do you want to be known for? When you know the kind of you want to be known for this, then you will have a sense of what message you want to send on the platforms. But also another starting point would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Joe Obasoga. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope that has offered some practical tips to the members of our audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe, for that. Joe, when you talk about being authentic and building your brand online, think, of course, nowadays with the whole existence of social media, everyone to a given extent does have a social media presence. But then you tend to find that when you have ordinary conversations with ordinary people, they'll go and say that maybe I know one Mark. This Mark on social media is so different from the Mark that I actually met in person. And so when you talk about being authentic, how does one actually try to be as authentic as possible on social media? Because you know how lawyers are not really allowed to advertise, but then there is that bridge of you want to, maybe let the public know that I know about competition law, this is my area, that kind of thing. But then maybe also you have scenarios where, someone's talking about competition law, but when you get to interact with them in person, you find that not so well read in this area, that kind of thing. How would you advise us to balance that?
Yeah,
and
I think
before Joel answers, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think that's an absolutely brilliant question. I think being authentic is can be, in some words, can be regarded as being true to your values and what you profess. One way of also understanding it in an easier way is this something I would say to someone I was seated with in my office or in the boardroom or at the bar association gathering? If you wouldn't and you would think twice, then I think that can be a good guide. But also, when we say being authentic, you have to understand what are your values, or what is your vocation? What areas are you interested in, or what areas are you keen on building a reputation around? I think when you understand that, you may not know everything in competition law, but if there is a case, for instance, concerning one of the major, internet service providers that has been unfairly treating consumers, you could comment and share your sentiments in a way that communicates that you have thought about it. It is another thing, obviously. I always say that no one is 100% an expert on everything. I think, in fact, that the more you read, the more you even work on a case, the more you realize that there are different facets or different ways of interpretation. And I think that's why we are in the legal profession. So my answer is authentic relates to your values and aspirations. But also, if you can have a conversation with someone in person, then I would also say that then as you engage online, you might want to think twice about what you put out if you would not be able to have a conversation with someone in person. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if that addresses your question, but that's how I think about it. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Joel. So next up, we shall be moving to the Q&A session. Our dear listeners, if you have any questions, you could feel free to raise your hand or you could type it in the chat. Right now, I think I have about 2 questions that I can see. I think the first one, I'll probably direct it to Laston. There is a question here from Awan Manirinde Berina, who says, if I have finished my law degree and I don't have finances to go to LDC, what can I do?
Wow, thank you, Brian, and that's equally a brilliant question. You have finished your undergraduate or you finished your law degree, you have to take the bar so that you're able to advance as an advocate. And I think the answers have already been shared from the previous panelists as they were making their presentations. And this is for me a straightforward answer. I want to quote from Ishobel. She said that your law degree or your qualifications are merely tools. They are not the destination. So where you're at, you have certain capacity and competencies that you have, that at that level, there is a value you can deploy. My first assignment, while we had not even graduated from the bar exam, I'm co-opted on a team where I'm a research assistant in a consultancy. The things that we were doing research on and the projects we're writing reports for, it's not anything that per se we had been taught in law school, but I would use my knowledge as a lawyer to interpret the laws and then make reports within the framework that had been given for my senior manager and supervisors to be able to generate the technical reports for the project. And that did not require me to really per se present my papers or my postgraduate diploma or my passing of the bar. But most importantly, I was required to be competent in the research. So there is a lot that you can do, whether as a research assistant, whether as if you're assisting in-house or you're assisting lawyers in private practice, but also your passion. What is your passion? I love the conversation around the work-life balance. What is really, really your passion? The misconception that probably without these qualifications, I cannot be the effective lawyer or the effective profession I need to be. I think go back to the conversations of how do you find your path and charter your path according to what I could say God has designed. What are your passions? What do you want to influence in this world? Are the qualifications important? Of course, they're important. They're the bare minimum. But if you have not attained them yet, right at the level where you are, there is still value that you can give for which the world can pay you for. Brian, that's my quick response, and other panelists can equally add as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Laston. I think in addition to what you've just said, there is a common joke or a common meme that a number of people may have come across recently, but I think it goes along the lines of, if you do not have the law degree, it's so important. And when you reach LDC, you have to also graduate. When you graduate and you still don't have a PC, you're still hustling. When you get a PC, you don't have clients, and you find yourself still hustling. So I think at the end of the day, you just have to try to build yourself. Use the academic or use your books as a as a platform, but it shouldn't really be the bearing of everything. Then the next question is from quite a number of questions coming in. There is Chisaka Namsime, who says, how do you know that you have reached burnout and you don't have that work-life balance? I think that question will go to Isabel.
You basically collapse. So how you know you've achieved burnout, when you start becoming very irritable, you start you stop enjoying what you're doing. That's like a very good sign. So if people start saying around you, you don't seem the same, you seem very irritated all the time, you're going to go through a busy season. So everybody here, all of the partners on this call will have seasons that they're busy. But you have to distinguish that from seasons where you're busy to seasons where you start seeing that you're going into a lull. So you are losing yourself, you are frustrated and irritable all the time, then you are starting, those are really the beginning signs. And I think a lot of people then ignore those things. The ultimate is actually physical, right? Your mental, your like your spiritual, your mental, your body, it's all interlinked. And so you end up, what most people end up doing is they actually have a physical breakdown. And then they say, oh, I'm burnt out. But actually, burnout starts earlier. So if you start seeing that I'm really not the same, or people who are your trusted support system, whether it's parents or your best friend or your sibling, start saying, hey, you know what, you're not the same. Like you really are changing. Those should be the initial red flags to say maybe I need a break. And sometimes you just need a break to really just process and think. I know a lot of the times it just feels like you can never take a break. And it's much more difficult now because we're always connected. If you have a mobile phone, you can check your emails on the weekend and you can do all of that stuff. When I started, at least at the very beginning, I did not have a phone. You know, when we were young lawyers, you didn't have like a phone that you could just be contacted all the time. And so the burnout, I feel like, is happening much quicker in this generation because we are constantly plugged in. And so there's certain times that I have to say to my team, like we had a very, very busy week, and I had to literally force the 4 members of my team where I just said, you cannot come to the office and I don't want to see you on email. And of course, there are a few things that had to be finished here and there. I was like, urgent stuff, get it done, but just rest your mind. So watch out for those initial red flags and then try to deal with it then. Sometimes it's just take the weekend away, have a silent weekend, detox from your phone, detox from being connected, go and do something fun, go dancing, do something that is just using your brain a different way. But don't wait until you actually have a collapse, because then it's very, very dangerous.
Thank you for that, Isabel. There is another question here. I think this will be going to Aisha. Shalua here is asking, mine is choosing between farms. If I am faced with picking between a farm that is a bit more established, but will not be so sure about being retained in that farm, but then there is another farm that is smaller, but with a greater chance of being retained. I think this is regarding aspects of when you finish the Ugandan bus school, that's Law Development Center, you go for clerkship, which is an internship. So she's lost between choosing between a big law firm that is established, probably maybe a band one or a tier one firm, where she has less chances of being retained or may not be retained, in comparison to going to a smaller firm that may be a startup, where she has chances of being retained. How best would you advise her in this scenario? Over to you, Aisha.
Thank you. First of all, can I just congratulate you? It's always good to have options in terms of your career progression, so well done. I think this is an interesting question. Generally, I would always choose the firm with the strongest reputation in the area I'm interested in. So for example, if I wanted to do disputes and there was a very large firm, but it wasn't known in disputes, I would be cautious about joining it because the quality of the training and the work experience I get will be adversely impacted. So I may actually choose perhaps a smaller firm, but they might have a stronger reputation in a particular field I'm interested in. If both firms do the same type of work, for example, and you think I'm interested in this practice and they both have it, always go for the one with the stronger reputation. And why do I say that? I say that because if firms with very good reputations in a particular area get very good instruction. So the briefs they get are very good, high quality, complicated, and you get very good exposure. I wouldn't worry at this stage about being retained, because if you get very good training and experience and exposure, then you have definitely improved your CV and you've improved how competitive you are. Conversely, if you choose a safer bet, but that doesn't give you the necessary exposure, then long term, you are going to be undermining your career progression. Career progression is not about playing it safe. Career progression is about understanding the market and taking essentially calculated risks. So you will take a risk. There's never a guarantee. Even a small firm, something might happen and they don't retain you. But it's about taking a calculated risk based on a reasonable amount of information. So do your research. And then as Muslims, we say, tie your camel and pray. So do your research, make the best choice and leave it, because you don't control everything.
Thank you very much for that, Aisha. Maybe continuing that conversation still, you being a partner in a firm, I think it's best that you answer this question that follows that. How best do you balance work environment in regards to my mental health? Because we are told that work environments are so toxic. So you as a senior lawyer, a senior colleague in the profession, how would you encourage a younger person who is just starting off? How do you encourage them to deal with that?
Okay, so work environments are not always toxic. I have worked with people who come to the office as a refuge from a toxic home environment. So toxicity is not limited to the workplace. It could be that actually your workplace is very nice, but you have some difficult personal relationships. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, while it's important to have potentially a conducive work environment, we must not confuse work with other things. So for me, ideally, I would like to get on with the colleagues I see day to day. It would actually make my work easier, and I do so. However, I'm a disputes lawyer. I must be effective even in times of pressure. What I tell people is that when I look back on my career, actually, the people I have often learned the most from have not been people who've been nice to me or people I have liked. And yet I was still able to remove the personal element and learn from them. And for example, you may even learn from them resilience. Resilience is never learned in a safe, happy, cozy environment. You won't learn resilience. And resilience often will take you further than technical excellence. So for you to learn resilience, you have to ask yourself, where will you learn it? If your home life is wonderful, inshallah it is, work again, very safe, there must be a way for you to develop resilience, because resilience will often be the distinguishing factor between two equal candidates. So often we have very good trainees and they're as intelligent, they got good grades at university, but the difference between somebody who is likely to stick and somebody who is likely to maybe display fragility and leave is this element of resilience. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you should accept discriminatory treatment, but if you work for a partner, you might work for me, and I am known to be very particular, and I want people to pay attention to detail in my pleadings, and I have very high exacting standards. You actually, as long as I apply that across the board to everyone, there's no discrimination, you're actually probably likely to learn more from somebody like that than somebody who's very easygoing and gives you the impression that you can get away with less than your best. So I think you need to ask yourself the question, what is it I'm trying to get out of this job? What are my key objectives? And if you can get 1, 2, maybe 3, I don't know, because life is not perfect. If you can get 1, 2, then the rest you leave it, because if you're expecting work to replace gaps in your personal life, emotional stability, I honestly think you're looking in the wrong place. And there may then be a mismatch between what you're expecting as an employee and what that organization will offer you. We must be realistic with each other. I don't want to lie to anyone. You know, where we work under a lot of pressure, and it doesn't suit everyone. When I interview people, I'm very upfront. I say, this may or may not suit you, but this is how we work, and I describe it. And we do work long hours. It suits certain people and they're committed and they stay, and for others it doesn't. And that is also okay. We're not trying to recruit everyone. We're only trying to recruit people with resilience who are likely to deserve the very high quality training we can give them. But we have to be selective. And you also must select appropriately. So don't apply to us if that doesn't suit you. I hope that's okay.
Can I just add to what Aisha was saying? Because I also think there's a tendency for young people to just kind of have this blanket statement of toxic. And I think we have to be careful. I mean, I love what Aisha's saying, like it's work. You know, I think you have to be careful. There are certain places that are really toxic, but toxic is a really strong word. You know, toxic means like Aisha said, discrimination. You have somebody who is very vocal, like just rude all the time, has very bad practices, is very disrespectful, unprofessional. That is toxic. That's a very, very strong word. But I think we have to be careful when you say that. I hear that workplaces are toxic. You know, that's just not true. Working is hard, and you cannot shy away from doing hard work and being in an environment where you have to be accountable and responsible and actually show up. And you're gonna sometimes get on the nerves of your partner or whoever's your supervisor, because you're not always going to get it right. And so I just want to say that, because I think, you know, I feel like sometimes young people like using these words like so, you know, broadly. Workplace is not toxic. You can have, sometimes you have a toxic person in an environment, and sometimes you need to build resilience around that. So of course, I would always say, if you know somebody who is like super, super toxic, they're always, like, I know a lot of people, they always like trying to sleep with the young women, and all, that is toxic. But most workplaces just require you to work, and sometimes you're going to make mistakes, and you will be shouted at, you know, professionally, but sometimes you'll make mistakes, and you have to be able to take some of the hard knocks of life. You cannot have everything soft and cushiony. It just doesn't work like that. And especially if you're going to, and it doesn't matter if even if you're going to a corporate law firm, there's certain things that are demanded of you. If you're going to work in a fashion law firm, don't think that you're working in a fashion business. Don't think that it's cute and fashiony. It's a business. So if you're going to sign up to work for somebody and to actually be intentional about your growth, then also sign up to, you know, have some thick skin, because growth doesn't come by somebody telling you that you're perfect all the time. But let's just be careful not to use these words like toxic workplaces. Most workplaces are perfectly fine. And sometimes somebody has a bad day and might be angry at you, and that's also okay, right? But let's just be conscious, just not to say, because I hear work environments are so toxic. It's not true.
Thank you very much, Isabel and Aisha, for that insight. I think this is probably going to be the last question. There is a question from Abraham Deng, who says, as a young lawyer who has just been licensed, how do I build my clientele? Are there etiquettes for the same? I'll give this to you, Laston.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for that question. Building one's clientele is subjective to many things. One, clients coming to you will come to you in terms of selling, and Ishobel said this, that naturally or in our training, we are not so much trained to be business people and to sell. So you have, of course, to identify what areas do you have the competency to give the service, and maybe answer the bigger question, what problems do you want to solve and for which clients? Yesterday, I was going through a particular teaching by a very interesting facilitator who was talking about 4 types of clients. He talked about the clients that can be difficult clients. He talked about the cheap clients. He talked about the sophisticated clients and high-ticket, high-end clients. So when you're starting out, there are clients you're going to have access to, and those you may not have access to. You begin humble. Don't despise the humble beginnings, but any client, whether big corporations or SMEs or even government or any institution, by the time they are taking on your service and paying you for your service as a lawyer, you must be resolving a particular problem for them, and you must be giving them a particular question. Joel was very kind to give us a bit of, insights. How do you market yourself? You ought to brand yourself. You ought to be able to be in a room with another probably senior person, and you're also considered as a potential service provider for legal services. And how do you do that? Your network is your net worth. Whose contacts do you have when you're trying to source work? It's not easy to sell, and it's not easy to, win business. Ask insurance agents as they are trying to get you to buy insurance. Sometimes they can be what they are, but they are insistent on selling, and they will insist on, can we meet your team? Can we, all these sorts of things that get them in the space to sell. So you'll begin probably with one client whom you do work for very well, and then they can refer to you other clients. You could probably hit a season where you're in a space and there are many people coming to you because they have seen you do something and they think that you'll be a good fit to work with them. So follow those steps, follow the steps, and then of course grow even in business. How do you attract and win business? There are all sorts of rich information and platforms where you can win. I don't think this thing is something of laying hands that now receive impartation, you can go in business. There are so many moving parts, and I don't think in one line answer we can answer it all, but you can begin small, impress that client, and then make them your referral. Have business coaches. If you know someone who knows someone you want to get to, use them as a business coach to make a referral to you. Say you have contacts with so and so, I want to meet them to do for them this work. Can you do an introduction? And you can have that coaching helping you in business, among other things. That's what I can share off the cuff, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that last one. I do not see any other questions. So I think that will be it from me. Thank you very much for this thought-provoking session that we've had. Our dear amazing speakers, for your time, your insight, your generosity, and your wisdom. I think today we've of course learned that success in the legal world is less about luck, but more about the strategy that you have. So whether you decide today to specialize or to go versatile and do many things that's upon you, but possibly go back and sit with yourself and sketch some sort of 5-year plan. So build wisely, grow smart, and win big. Over to you, Gabriel. Gabriel.
Brian, I think Gabriel is not here at the moment. I would request that we have closing remarks from the panelists before we can, just going back to the topic, can we have closing remarks?
All right. I think we shall start from down. Joel.
Okay. Thank you very much. As parting words, it has been quite an enriching conversation, and just like to say to the young lawyers to believe in themselves. And sometimes there can be a lot of pressures that can make you question, yourselves, or you've applied to a big law firm or a Magic Circle firm or a big law or one of the big four, and you haven't gotten in, and you're questioning whether or not you have the resolve that it takes to be successful. Please give yourself a chance. I think the panelists have made very good points that can help you start off. So keep resilient. That resilience is important, being hardworking, but also seeking out mentors. And that, when you tie it together with being intentional about your branding, which means both online and physical, you can get yourself ahead. Thank you so much, the East African Law Society, for this opportunity. Thank you very much, Agatha and Brian, for moderating this conversation. And thank you to the esteemed panelists who shared such nuggets of wisdom, which I've also learned from and I hope to apply in the next couple of years of my career. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joel, for that. Isabel.
Thank you guys for organizing these. I think it's really important that you have these sort of conversations because I think we need to be better about equipping the next generation of lawyers. So in my parting words, I would say be intentional about your own growth, about protecting your mental health, be visible. So show up on time, be ambitious without being overbearing, right? So be visible. Be kind, because kindness goes a very, very long way. I think back a lot of the young people I meet, it's just they're not trying to be pushy, they're just kind. So be kind, because kindness is very memorable. Be entrepreneurial. Let's think outside of the box. Think about all the different things. Don't, especially when you think about things like AI, don't think, oh my goodness, AI is taking away my job. Unfortunately, I did a mind mapping, but the team were not able to show it, but you can see how many things are actually coming to the benefit of lawyers to think through all these incredibly new legal issues, these risks that are coming up. So be entrepreneurial in your legal career and be global. Don't just think about your country. Think about what can I learn from other countries? How can I work in other countries? How can I serve clients from other countries in my country? Okay. All the best for your legal career.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Aisha, parting shots.
Sorry, just trying to turn my video on. Yes, firstly, I just wanted to say I agreed a lot with my fellow speakers, especially Isabel. I think a lot of what she said resonated with me. I would just like to reiterate a point I make frequently. Resilience isn't built in cozy, safe environments. You must take risk. You must expose yourself. The most important thing is, why are you doing so? If you believe you are doing so because it's adding value to your CV, because you are gaining valuable work experience, that one over time is worth more than money. And again, there are people who told me I would never be a litigator, and they were quite, difficult bosses to work with. But honestly, I owe them a lot, because they gave me the thick skin I need to perform my job daily under pressure. So I do thank them, and you may reflect later that some of the people you are ungrateful to, you actually need to reconsider what they have done for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Last one.
Well, Brian, you have still put me in a difficult place. I don't know what parting shots I could say after Joel, after Isabel and Aisha. They have been very excellent panelists. I add my voice to Joel's that I've learned quite a lot listening to my fellow panelists. This webinar has taken me thinking what do I need to do differently? Of course, it's something that I had in plan, but it's different when you begin to reflect quite very deeply. My last shots, if I may add, a cent or two, is that you could be just one step away, one step of growth away to your next career, to your next career level. Just one step of growth if you purpose to grow. I would encourage three things. One, be open to learn. I'll resound that. Our generation today, mostly the young generation, learning may not be our best ally, but let us be open to learn. Let us be loyal to principles. Aisha, you have been spot on when you say that resilience is not really built in a cozy, comfortable environment. So be loyal to principles. If you want to grow, if you want to be cut out in a different way or clock, you have to be resilient and you have to be loyal to the things that grow resilience. And then lastly, be intentional about growth. Growth does not come by mistake. Promotions in terms of more responsibility does not come by mistake. Be intentional to grow and keep at it. As long as you have life, as long as you have hope, you can do better. To our moderators, Agatha, my sister, thank you so much. And Brian, my brother, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to the East Africa Law Society as well. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Laston. Thank you very much, participants, attendees, panelists. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. So of course, like I said, as we log out today, sit down with yourself, reflect and sketch a 5-year plan. So on behalf of the East African Law Society, the organizing team, thank you for being here and keep showing up for your future. Till next time.
Brian, it's been recorded on YouTube. Yeah, it's been recorded. Someone is asking about the recording. It's there on YouTube, so you can check it out any other time, and you revise the notes that's been shared. Thank you so much. Have a great evening and see you next time.